Howdy, and welcome to the final event in Texas A&M's Virtual Earth Month. If you're here with us today, that probably means you've been with us for most of these Virtual Earth Month talks, and just want to let you know how much we appreciate your attendance, your participation, and especially those of you who have really put in the effort to join almost all of these calls live. Definitely have noticed a few of you that have been on almost every single live presentation, and that just means a whole lot to us, means a lot to our students. Definitely wouldn't be able to do that without all of you here to attend. So again, just thank you so much. So with our final talk for Virtual Earth Month, we're going to be looking at different industries and looking at how sustainable they are. So the first industry we're going to look at is like the textile industry. You can kind of think about clothing. We're also going to look at cryptocurrency. So I think it should be really interesting. I think cryptocurrency is something we haven't heard a lot about. I think thinking about fashion and clothes is something that people are often interested in. So it should be a really interesting way to look at two different industries today. And if you've been here, you probably know all the things I'm about to cover next, but just for the sake of doing this, so everyone's on the same page, I'll go over this quickly. So first, put your use your toolbar to change your view mode to side-by-side mode. Best way to watch a presentation, hands down. Also, the live transcript is turned on. If you would like to see some subtitles, please, go to your toolbar. You can turn that on. You can also turn it off if you see it and it's bothering you. But however you want to watch it, you have that option. Also, at the end of this event, we would love if you could just ask some questions. You could ask them in the chat. You could turn your camera on. You could ask them that way. We'd love to have a discussion to conclude Virtual Earth Month. And this will be recorded. We'll post it on our YouTube page. We'll also have it's actually currently live on Facebook right now. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of that if you decide to turn on your camera, that you will be recorded. And then the next thing we have is prizes. We have awesome prizes, and you've probably collected a bunch of code words at this point. So you get code words by attending these virtual events. Each code word is equal to 1 point, and you can use that point as a drawing into our random draw giveaway. And I guess I should also point out, it's not just code words. You can also watch some videos on YouTube. It's a virtual campus tour, and go to a Google form and get points that way. You can sign up for the Aggie Sustainability Alliance and get points that way. And you can also do some composting at the Howdy Farm. There's so many different ways you can earn points and get entries into the giveaway. And you should be aware that this giveaway, well, first, there will be a code word. It'll be written, it'll be spoken on a slide, it'll be in the chat. And what we want you to do at the end of everything, which is today, after you've watched everything that you want to watch, and you can go to our YouTube channel, and you can see any old videos you missed to collect some extra code words. And again, the virtual tour I mentioned, the composting, ASA, different ways for you to get points. You have all the way until April 30th to complete everything. And when you have everything compiled, just send one email to sustainability@tamu.edu. And if you have previously sent like a couple other emails, please put all of everything you have into one email. I'll definitely do my best to go back and make sure I track all your points, but that would just make things a lot easier for all of us as we track all of these entries. And then you can earn up to 7 points per event and only one when you watch it recorded. And you can even earn cash through the Maroon Base. It's a separate app. It's not affiliated with our program. It's a School of Innovation, but this is something you can use all year long, and you can add points from our events into your total. And at the end of every semester, they give away cash prizes up to $2,000. So that's pretty sweet. And then you can see all of the rules here on this page. And then here's the prizes. You can get a Nintendo Switch. I know everyone wants that one. We have different fitness watches like an Apple Watch. You get AirPods. You can get a Galaxy Buds Pro. You could win a Yeti cooler, if you want to go out and take some adventures outside, do some camping. And in that same vein, record your adventures with a GoPro Hero 7. And then you could also just wear one of our t-shirts and drink one out of one of our water bottles during your excursion outside, or just in class. And those are things you can earn. You don't even have to do the drawing. If you collect a certain number of code words from a certain number of events, you can actually get yourself those just by participating. And I would like to point out that fitness watches, headphones, Yeti coolers, and GoPro Hero 7, those are all choices. So if you were to get the first prize, you could choose any of those. If you were to get second place, you could choose everything but the Nintendo Switch. Third place, everything but the Nintendo Switch. So you're going to have options. That way, if you have a Samsung phone, you get Galaxy. If you have an iPhone, you get Apple headphones. All right, so without further ado, we have Francesco and Madison here with us today, interns in the Office of Sustainability. They're going to take it away and they're going to teach us about the textile industry and also cryptocurrency. So hope y'all enjoy our final presentation. And again, thanks so much for being here. So whenever y'all are ready, you can start sharing your screen.
Okay, howdy everyone. My name is Madison. I am a junior environmental geoscience major, and like Ben mentioned, we're going to be talking about sustainability of textiles and cryptocurrency. So I'm going to be talking about textiles, and then Francesco, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Francesco Previto. I'm a senior MIS major, and I'm going to be talking about sustainability in the cryptocurrency industry.
Okay, so first off, we're going to start with what is sustainability. So there's a lot of different definitions, but this is the one we're going to be using. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So we're going to be looking at that definition through the lens of social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So those three pillars are how we'll be viewing sustainability in our presentation. And then this is just a little diagram that shows that and how they all intersect. These are the UN Sustainability Development Goals. So for my topic, which is fast fashion and the textile industry, the goals for sustainable development that we would be reaching would be decent work and economic growth, number 8, number 9, industry innovation and infrastructure, 10, reduced inequalities, 12, responsible consumption and production. Yeah, and then Francesco, do you want to tell them which ones yours will cover?
So as far as sustainability in cryptocurrency industry goes, I think it reaches over into a lot of these goals, but I think the biggest one that it sort of focuses on is sustainability in industry, innovation, and infrastructure, number 9.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to start off by explaining what the textile industry is. So the textile industry is the design, production, and distribution of cloth and clothing. So what does this mean? This means that the textile industry includes multiple industries. So we have cotton farmers that are manufacturing like the cotton that goes into the clothing. And then we have the designers that are designing the clothes and the clothing. And then the fast fashion companies, which are using the cotton and using the designers to make their clothing. And then they use factories to produce the clothing. So first, I'm going to explain a very sad tragedy that was like a failure for social sustainability in the fast fashion industry. So it is the Rana Plaza tragedy in Bangladesh. This happened in April 24th, 2013 in Bangladesh. And what happened was there was this factory of workers that were producing fast fashion, and the building was just in very poor condition. So the workers were pointing out the cracks in the building to the managers and saying that it was unsafe. But unfortunately, the factory owners, they ignored the orders to evacuate, and they just ignored all the concerns that the workers were pointing out. So as a result of this, tragically, 1,129 workers were killed in the collapse. And then it also took many hours and even a couple days for everyone to be rescued from the rubble and found. And many of the survivors were severely disabled from the collapse, and they can no longer work. So it's very sad reality of the fast fashion industry. A few more health risks that go with the factory workers. They have limited clean water. They often can't use the bathroom. There's eye strain because they're focusing on these, producing these clothing, fatigue, lung disease by breathing in all the fibers from the cloth. And then like in the Rana Plaza incident, there were blocked and non-existent emergency exits. So a lot of people were trapped in the factory when it collapsed. So clothing brands like Forever 21 and H&M and other fast fashion brands that you may be familiar with, they're outsourcing their labor, so they're not actually responsible for the factory workers and the conditions of the factory and what the workers are going through. So it's not necessarily like Forever 21's specifically, it's not like their factory, it's just another factory that they chose. And then if the factory is like, oh, we don't want to sell you the clothing for the price you're asking, then Forever 21 or H&M or whoever will just move on to another factory and say, okay, well, we'll find someone else that can produce the goods for the price we want. So another social sustainability strategy is that the cotton farmers, like I mentioned, they are part of the textile industry. So in India, they cannot compete with the prices that the market is asking. So a lot of times the brand will want to buy the cotton and they'll be like, okay, I'm willing to pay you like $20 for all this cotton. And the farmer is like, well, I can't really afford to live and survive on that money. So unfortunately, what will happen is they'll take their own lives in the fields because they cannot afford to keep up with these prices, and they just think that their family will be better off without them. And then for economic sustainability, we have, that transitioned weird, but there is economic development for the developing countries by having these textile and fast fashion brands working there. But it's not very good for the economy because they earn so little money that it's not doing as much as it could be doing. And the workers, like I mentioned, are in poor and unsafe conditions, and the unions have very limited power in this situation. And then this is just a photo of the workers. It's just very crowded and cramped and just not safe and not the best for their economy. Okay, now we have our code word. It's going to be 650, and you'll see in a minute why that is the code word. So environmentally, fast fashion in the textile industry is very unsustainable because 90% of all clothing is thrown away. And you can see here, the clothing will just get baled up whenever it's unsold at the thrift store, or even if the company just has too much stock, they just bale it up, and sometimes they'll even slash and burn it so people cannot use the clothing. So here is where our code word comes into play. 650 gallons of water are what is required to make one cotton t-shirt. So that's just an insane amount of water, and not very environmentally sustainable to think about that much water being translated to just one little t-shirt. And also, going along with the cotton, they require increasing amounts of pesticides. So what happens is the agriculture industry, they will make the cotton seeds and sell them to the cotton farmers. But the seeds, because they're like genetically modified, they need more and more pesticides. So the farmers will use the pesticides, but then what happens is the seeds from the cotton crop that are produced, they are not able to actually produce cotton. So then they have to just buy more cotton seeds the next year and even use more and more pesticides, and pesticides are not good for the environment. So here is what you can do to help. So we're going to try to avoid fast fashion. These are all fast fashion. A lot of these places are places you see at the mall. You probably shop at them. You might not realize that they're fast fashion, but unfortunately they are fast fashion, and they are not socially or economically or environmentally sustainable. So instead, we're going to opt for thrift stores and online resale shops and other brands that are very transparent about their sustainability practices. So while it is really great to buy from these more sustainable brands, for a lot of people, that's just not in their price range. People can't spend $50 on a t-shirt, and it's a lot more affordable to just go to Forever 21 and buy a $5 t-shirt instead. So it's very important that we try to shop secondhand if we can, because that is more economically and environmentally friendly for most people that are in college and don't have a lot of money. But if you can splurge on a more expensive item, just know that it will really last you for a long time, and you know that the workers are paid fair wages and they're not ruining the environment. So yeah, also you can look for the Certified B Corporation emblem on different clothing, and those brands have gone through like a rigorous like certification process to show that they are a sustainable brand. And that's all I have for the textile industry. So I'm going to hand it over to Francesco, and he will talk to you about cryptocurrency.
Sweet, thanks for that, Madison. So this is something I want to talk about because I think there's been a lot of hype recently and for a while now over this topic, since it has the potential to revolutionize the way we think about money and what currency really is. So first things first, what is cryptocurrency? I'm going to keep the description of what it is really brief and leave it at crypto is a digital currency that uses blockchain technology. It's a proposed new method to store value and use as a medium of exchange, and examples of it are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Dogecoin. But I also want to delve into blockchain a bit because it'll be important to understand what it really is moving forward in this presentation, and also just so you know the technology that made all of this possible. So to put it short, it is a trustless ledger system. Anybody can add lines to the ledger, and at the end of the month, everybody settles. Each line has digital signatures to ensure security and validation. Usually a centralized authority verifies the ledgers like a bank, but with blockchain, everyone can verify the ledger for themselves. I'd also like to introduce Bitcoin miners here, as their role is to monitor all transactions and validate them. At least this is how it works for Bitcoin specifically. These private entities, so to speak, are incentivized to do this work and expend an amount of computational power through a Bitcoin reward system where they receive Bitcoin for accomplishing this work. Now, instead of trying to discuss whether or not you should invest or debate its validity, I want to talk about its sustainability, specifically its effects on social, economic, and environmental sustainability. Next slide, please. And then, yeah, there's just some definitions there. All right, so social sustainability. First point I wanted to cover in this regard is that Bitcoin decouples people from government finances. And that's the whole point, right? The whole appeal of Bitcoin is that it is a trustless system. You don't want to trust this overpowering entity that can potentially manipulate the value of currency single-handedly. However, a problem to consider is that the people more likely to be able to be decoupled from government finances are typically the ones who are wealthy enough at this point to gain any real value from investing in or buying Bitcoin. This is problematic because then the wealthy are becoming more independent of a system that's designed to look after the needs of the whole society, and unfortunately, the whole society has huge wealth disparities. With all that said, and this brings me to my second point, my concern here is that this decoupling of wealthier people who don't trust or take advantage of a centralized system of government financing or banks or such is that it potentially reduces financing for government programs. To elaborate on this idea, this concern about financing government programs is primarily a concern for the US government should the use of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin become more widely accepted and mainstream. The reason being that for so long now, US Treasury bonds have been known and widely bought as a very, very safe asset that people can own and know that the value of their money will grow safely. This helps people because then they know their money is safe, and it helps the government because then they have more money to finance programs like infrastructure projects and the like. Please withhold any comments you may have about how effectively the US government commits to these projects to begin with, but now to the point, if we begin to introduce a new quote unquote safe asset that people will spend their money on instead of the bonds, this potentially exacerbates the already troubling US debt issue and takes away from public funding for the benefit of private entity safety. I will add, one can argue that this is a good way to keep governments accountable for wasteful spending, right? Because now they aren't the only option. People can turn to something else if these governments kind of want to misbehave, just something to think about. But now, last point on this topic, to look at some current real world issues that arise from this use of Bitcoin blockchain evangelism, I want to talk about this term blockchain imperialism that I read from a journal talking about blockchain imperialism in the Pacific specifically. This idea goes back to blockchain, a fundamental technology to cryptocurrency, and how it's one of Silicon Valley's big ideas of the decade. However, blockchain has also in some ways become a form of platform imperialism, so to speak, as it's a platform for the United States to extend its culture and economic power. This is because blockchain is part of this cult of techno-solutionism. In other words, for those of you who have watched The Avengers, when Howard Stark says everything is achievable through technology, just this overall idea that advancements in tech are going to solve all our problems, there's a dark side of that way of thinking. The desire for a new world built upon blockchain technology stemming from the raging success of cryptocurrency, along with fetishization of ethnic indigenous peoples in the Pacific, these libertarian island fantasies converge to produce what the journal calls the Pacific blockchain frontier. This is a frontier where Western powers come in an attempt to provide blockchain solutions for local problems. One example being using blockchain for land registration systems. Expanding outside of currency security isn't terrible at first thought, right? Like obviously people wouldn't be going there if there wasn't a problem with the current land registrations, right? Like people do genuinely want to use this technology for the greater good to help people. The problem in this example, specifically land registration being in need of a rational technology solution, is that this isn't the first time a developed country has swept into the aid of Polynesian communities, or honestly developing countries as a whole, in seeming need of assistance. In 1880, Britain also came in and attempted to develop a more advanced land registration system for the local people there. And it ended up that this became a vehicle for further colonial expansion on the ground. And one could argue that we are well past these imperialist tendencies, but these new age technology solutions still trample on a legacy of human resistance to Western expansion, which to this day has been the thing that has helped to preserve indigenous land and culture. So I'd like to wrap up this idea by saying cryptocurrency and blockchain may have its benefits and detriments. We don't know yet because this thing is so new, but one thing is for sure that there is no one size fits all solution to every problem. These new technologies like blockchain and Bitcoin, they do have the potential to do a lot of good, but we shouldn't forget that everything comes at a cost. So next slide, please. So economically, first point here, it's a hedge against the US dollar. This refers to what I said earlier about bonds and cryptocurrency. It applies to economic sustainability as well. So I just wanted to add a note here, but unique to economic sustainability though, the next point I wanted to cover is that I also wanted to mention how part of the attraction of Bitcoin is that it provides an opportunity for a high value investment in a developed society. In other words, you can hate Bitcoin, you can hate the Bitcoin evangelists running around, but you'd have to be a fool not to see the opportunity. These investments are growing in value like crazy. So whether people understand it or not, it's all the rage. And it's largely because as economies become more developed, it becomes harder to find investments like these that give big returns. For example, in a poorer country, less developed country, it's easier to see how building a road in X location will grant a lot of value. It opens up trade, people can move quicker, the area becomes cleaner. It creates a ton of value for a very simple and cheap solution. But think about the US's position. We already have a powerful economy. So now in order to create value under the capitalist system we have to continue finding more creative ways to expand our economy, which can be through research and development, investing in emerging economies, and at the local level. So for us personally, this means stuff like investing in risky startups, or now Bitcoin. Problem here is that this potentially becomes a thing of money making more money instead of you make money, invest it back into society in order to potentially create value at a risk, and then stuff happens. So is it a good idea to take this money out of circulation? Will we find ways to ingratiate crypto into normal society like any normal currency if it becomes mainstream? Just something to think about. Next slide, please. All right, so environmental sustainability, this is the big one. This is actually the way I became inspired to talk about this. Was I saw this one tweet that said, because not everyone knows, if Bitcoin's price ever reaches $1 million, it'll output more carbon than the entire United States and consume 2 times the entire electrical production of the US. And it gets worse. Now, obviously, shouldn't believe everything you see on Twitter. So looked into it, and apparently this idea that this Twitter guy was talking about specifically goes back to what I said earlier about how Bitcoin miners are encouraged to expend an amount of computational power in return for Bitcoin rewards. this concern comes from the idea of basic supply and demand. As Bitcoin becomes more valuable, people want to use more and more power to mine coins. As it stands, Bitcoin is equivalent carbon footprint to the country of New Zealand. So sort of a red flag for concern there. For now, though, in order to paint this idea in a clearer light, I want to focus more on a more digestible example of power consumption as it pertains to Bitcoin mining practices in Australia and China. So at the moment, fun factoid, Chinese crypto miners account for about 70% of total miners. The Chinese government, concerned about pollution, is a little concerned about these energy-hungry miners and wants energy companies to stop giving deals to these crypto miners. And like, what is this? Crypto miners making deals with energy companies? What does that mean? Well, for example, there's a crypto mine in Australia that sort of infamously signed a deal to reopen a coal mine for energy. Again, as prices rise, incentive to mine more, improve computational power, and invest in energy creation and consumption increases. And there are some solutions to these sorts of problems. For example, in cold countries like Norway, Switzerland, miners can find cheap, sustainable energy, and it costs less to cool systems because of the weather there. I think currently a survey was done, and something around 39% of Bitcoin mining companies, specifically Bitcoin, mine using renewable energy. But in these cases, crypto miners still hog a lot of the renewable energy from others in society. Regardless what energy type they use, the issue is how insanely energy intensive these mines are. So even if they use renewable energy, keep in mind energy as an aggregate is finite. And using energy for crypto mines means less energy for residential areas, other businesses who may still need energy. So you can probably guess this means now they turn to non-renewables. So just to expand our view for a second, we need to keep in mind that this greater fight against climate change means we have to care about the aggregate of carbon emissions, not just if crypto miners specifically, I'll just use renewables, then we're good. That's missing the point. But back to crypto sustainability itself, though, something else that I found interesting and that is a cause for concern is that as miners are more incentivized to increase their computational power, it's that crypto mines require a lot of what's known as baseload power, which is the ability to provide energy on demand, which is necessary because crypto mines only work if they run 24/7. And this is something energy production sources like solar and wind cannot promise until battery tech improves, because wind doesn't always blow and the sun's not always out. But coal and oil can provide this baseload power. So wrapping this slide up, carbon footprint is only increasing with crypto prices. Crypto mining is already projected to consume more than 120 billion kilowatts of energy, which for reference is about equal to Argentina's entire annual electricity consumption, and is 3 times as much energy as it's consumed in 2017, so exponentially increasing. And I've read some arguments mentioning how crypto miners will naturally look towards green energy because supposedly there's some built-in incentive to go green when mining, but are we not already sufficiently incentivized globally to go green? I think we're all going to die, or best case scenario, the world / climate as we know it change permanently should already be a pretty good incentive. So the key takeaway here is just being, I think it's important that people understand this is something that needs to be addressed and can't just be left to the invisible hand. So in conclusion, the last slide, it's already here. I don't want this presentation to be a reason to like protest Bitcoin or have existential crises or something crazy. I know this seemed very negative overall, but that's just because I wanted to highlight issues that aren't talked about enough since they're overshadowed by all this good and glamour of cryptocurrency and blockchain. There's plenty of discussion as it is online in books, if you join a finance group chat, about is this prudent investing? Will I actually benefit? Potential alternative applications for the technology and what the future holds for crypto. But I think it's important to consider moving forward, who does this really benefit? What are we leaving behind if we head into a crypto dominated world where this cyber libertarian mindset reigns supreme? And for what purpose do we really do all of this? So with that said, I think that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thanks to everybody who could make it out. And if anyone has any questions about anything Madison or I talked about, the floor is open.
All right, thank you, Francesco and Madison. It was definitely really interesting. Really appreciated getting to learn from both of you, you know, some more about 2 different industries. I don't see any questions in the chat, and obviously right now there's a big storm coming down, so definitely understand if people need to be worried about that outside of our discussion. But I have a few questions that I could ask. So I guess first, since we have kind of two different topics, I'll just ask questions individually. Madison, do you have any kind of like thrifting tips or anything like that for us? Such as like any like favorite local places or anything like that?
Yeah, so I really like Uptown Cheapskate. That's a good one. But also just like general thrifting tips is to like buy basics like a white t-shirt and a black t-shirt and a gray t-shirt or a gray tank top. So that way that your wardrobe isn't just trendy and you're not just buying into every single trend you see. It's really important to just have like the essentials that you need and not to buy every trend, because most of the trends you see, like some of the trends we saw in the summer that people were wearing, there's no way they're wearing that this summer. So it's just best to buy basics. Even if you want to participate in the trends, it's not the best. So you could buy them secondhand if you find something really trendy and then just donate it back when you're done with it.
Oh yeah, that's great. Thanks for that advice, Madison. And also, maybe are you able to like resell clothes anywhere? Like you could actually like buy clothes and resell them and make profit off of that.
Yeah, I like to resell my clothes on Facebook Marketplace. I don't know how many people still use Facebook, but it's definitely helpful to use that resource because you can just like message automatically on there.
It looks like we have a question in the chat for you, Madison. Where would college gear stores such as Aggieland Outfitters and the Warehouse fit in for the two categories you mentioned? I think they're talking about if they're, kind of like fast fashion or if they were more sustainable.
Yeah, I'd say those are probably fast fashion just because they are like very mass produced clothing and they're like random brands. You couldn't like find it and you couldn't find their website and find their sustainability practices. They're just going to be kind of like random like boutique type clothing. So those most likely are fast fashion. They are like Aggieland Outfitters. That place is pretty expensive, but it's likely that they're still not sustainable because you're not going to be able to find much information about that brand if you look it up.
All right, great. Thank you, Madison. Appreciate those answers. So, Francesco, I want to ask you a couple questions as well. So first, could you maybe talk a little bit about maybe what you see in terms of issues with like income inequality? If we continue to move into this world of Bitcoin, and I think you kind of mentioned the idea of the fact of like how richer people are going to be likely to use Bitcoin as well. And what does that mean when we think about like, paying taxes and things like that? We already know that richer Americans pay less taxes currently than they have in a very long time. So that's obviously very problematic in terms of funding government projects that you mentioned. So I was wondering if you could just maybe talk a little bit about those kind of ideas as taxes and income inequality in relation to Bitcoin.
Right, sweet, yeah. So I'll preface it by saying, when I was looking into this whole cryptocurrency industry and the sustainability of it all, it was actually super interesting, just like the potential for it and complexity of it. So there's honestly probably a lot of different answers that come about for different reasons to that question. But I guess to reference what I was talking about when I was saying stuff like that, there's probably wealthier people that are going to be investing this and really profiting from it. That just came from the fact that I think nowadays, specifically because of how the internet works, people can kind of all just get bubbled up in all their little bubbles and don't really think about society as a whole when they commit certain activities. So I think a lot of us, particularly us getting college educations and stuff, we are probably more likely witness to these communities of people who are really excited about this. And it seems really good. And we have the money available to do. And if we spend this money to invest in Bitcoin or something, it could be really good for us. But something to consider is just as far as income inequality, which has its own presentation, honestly, if we wanted to. There's actually some pretty daunting statistics about just how privileged social media communities can be, and how much we don't know about people who don't have the opportunity to invest in Bitcoin. And as Bitcoin becomes more and more valuable, something interesting to think about is that if you invest like in Bitcoin now, you're not going to be nearly as successful as these people who have already invested in Bitcoin since the beginning. And these people who have invested since the beginning are very independent, don't trust government systems, don't want to give back to it, and kind of don't really have to, since it hasn't really been widely accepted and put into the systems we have nowadays. So what that ends up meaning is, I guess, two facts to consider here is, one, that if Bitcoin continues increasing in value, I think relatively soon about half the billionaires in the world are going to just be Bitcoin billionaires, which is pretty insane. And then also just pairing that with just the mindset that they're going to be having, and just that cyber libertarianism that I was talking about, how they don't trust like centralized systems. It means that they kind of keep the money to themselves. And it's already, there's some concerns and some debates about, is this taxable? How are we going to tax Bitcoin? Like, how are we going to tax cryptos? Is this going to be a good outlet for, I guess, kind of underground payments for sketchy stuff? I don't know, it just kind of brings it all to light. And someone mentioned that, yeah, as always, rich people are using it to hide their money. I think that is like a good point. If rich people want to hide their money, they have a lot of ways to do it. It's just like, I think Bitcoin, I don't know, it's just something to consider. That's just like, is this really the amazing, like for the people, democratic currency that we really think it is? Or is this, again, going to support the establishment that's already there? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And you really obviously brought up all the other negatives of Bitcoin with all the energy usage. And is it actually sustainable? If the world transitioned to a kind of a blockchain world, you've kind of shown us here today that really probably wouldn't be possible, in terms of energy usages, because it requires so much energy. And thinking about that, I believe there's even new technologies for blockchain. Like, it's not just relegated to the world of money. There's other emerging technologies that also use blockchain. Is that true?
I believe so. There's stuff like, I think people are trying to apply blockchain just because it's such a novel idea. But from what I've researched, it doesn't look like it's too widely used in alternative application outside of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. So yeah.
I guess the one I was thinking about is something called an NFT, and I think that you can
yeah, those are interesting.
Digital like entertainment, like a trading card, no longer be purchased in like a pack. It would be digital. It would only be digital. Is that one of the ones you heard about?
That's interesting. Yeah. No. Yeah, I don't know too much about them. From what I've heard, it's like a similar concept to like buying a piece of art, in that it kind of just has the value that you attribute to it. But it's just so strange to me, honestly, just because I don't know. It was a really strange idea. But I did read, though, I guess something interesting in that space, that someone I know that was trying to buy an NFT. This was really interesting to me, was that they had to go through all these like middlemen, and I forgot like what even the words for them were, because it's all just new ideas. But it was interesting because I think blockchain and cryptocurrencies are supposed to be these new amazing things that you don't want to like go through these middlemen. You don't want to go through banks. You don't want to like whatever, all this stuff. But this guy, as he was trying to buy an NFT, went through a process that was suspiciously similar to doing that. Now, granted, it isn't actually like you're going through banks and stuff, like it's different, but it does kind of make you think like, is this just the same thing, but you're just like kind of giving different names to it? And I don't know. So
like different right now, but you are going to have markets emerging that kind of capitalize in the same way. So
yeah, pretty much.
And I also just wanted to point out something that Francesco had said. He said he saw this in a tweet, which I think is really relevant because a lot of us are getting our information this way. But then he also went on to say, well, I didn't only just believe what the tweet said. I used that to do further research. And that was how he developed his presentation. So I think it's just cool how we were able to get ideas from social media, But I think that was a really important thing that he had mentioned, is just the fact that, he did further research. I just wanted to point that out as really good research practice for everyone. Everyone's saying thanks. Everyone was amazing, super interesting. Madison recommended a documentary about fast fashion called The True Cost. It's on Amazon Prime, she thinks. That's a great starting point. And I would also I want to just end on this last question. Someone asked us in the chat. What do you think about the recent, I don't know how you say this, is it Dogecoin hype?
I think the correct way is actually, I don't even know, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. But I just call it Dogecoin, and everybody I know calls it Dogecoin. But yeah, because what do I think about the recent Dogecoin hype? I guess my personal opinion on it, I don't know. It's interesting. It's weird because it's not like Bitcoin in that it has like some plan for it, or like some, I don't know, something to kind of ground its value on. Like it's legitimately just, it started as a meme. Like it was actually just a meme, and I think just people would just like wanted to get it to a dollar valuation just for the fun of it. I think Elon Musk just keeps talking about it, so it's growing in value. I don't know. It's I can't really speak too much on it. It seems interesting. I guess from my perspective, it kind of just looks like a pyramid scheme, in the sense that you buy some, you hope a bunch of other people buy some, so it grows in value.
Yeah, and I think
I don't know. Maybe if it gets widely accepted enough, I don't know. So we'll see. But
I think like 30% of the coins are owned by like 2 people or something in existence.
I did. That was actually another thing. Yeah, there's so much on this topic that I think could be talked about, but I only have like 10 minutes.
Yeah, we're already going over time, but
Yeah.
Madison and Francesco, thank you all very much. I personally learned a lot from both of your presentations. I think it's really cool that we looked at 2 different separate industries and connected, the different things that are related to sustainability in both industries. And, hopefully watching it, you're able to apply what you just saw Francesco Madison do to those industries to almost any industry. And you can look at it and just see how sustainable is it really, and just further examine it. Something looks great on the surface like Bitcoin, but we dig a little bit deeper and there's a whole other side of it that we haven't really considered. So hopefully you got that, and hope everyone stays safe. This rain is really coming down now, so for everyone is able to stay safe and everything, and hopefully nothing else happens with the rain. But I hope all of y'all have wonderful weekends. Again, thank you so much for participating. This is the last event. Get all your code words, and everyone take care. Everyone have a great weekend. Bye, y'all.